Tonight, he's considered one of the most powerful men in the world. Now the Frenchman who heads the IMF is in a New York City jail, charged with attempted rape. Also tonight, Endeavor's final mission. The shuttle lifts off with Mark Kelly in command and his wounded wife, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, watching from a wheelchair. No Trump in the Republican deck. The Donald takes himself out of the presidential race before he was ever in. And Steve Hartman's Assignment America, her 4-decade-long vigil for an American hero, has come to an end.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. Dominique Strauss-Kahn isn't a household name here in the U.S., but Forbes magazine calls him one of the 40 most powerful people in the world. He's head of the International Monetary Fund, and in France, he was favored to be the next president. That is until he was arrested here in New York, accused of sexually assaulting a hotel maid. That news sent shockwaves through European financial markets, and tonight, Michelle Miller reports he's being held without bail.
Dominique Strauss-Kahn faces 7 counts, including attempted rape, unlawful imprisonment, and sexual assault, all connected to an alleged attack on a 32-year-old chambermaid who had entered to clean his penthouse hotel suite Saturday afternoon. She later ID'd him in a lineup, and authorities say they have DNA evidence to back her story.
He sexually assaulted her and attempted to forcibly rape her. When he was unsuccessful, he forced her to perform oral sex on him.
Nearly 5 hours later, police arrested him aboard a flight to Paris, 10 minutes before takeoff. Hotel security found out he was at the airport after calling him about a cell phone he'd left behind.
That's not consistent with someone who's trying to conceal his whereabouts. This theory that he ran out of the hotel and ran to the airport to run away is simply not true.
But in denying bail, Judge Melissa Jackson called the multimillionaire a flight risk.
When I hear that your client was at JFK Airport about to board a flight, that raises some concern.
Strauss-Kahn has run the IMF for nearly 4 years, guiding nations through the global economic meltdown and most recently the European debt crisis.
I think his leadership at the IMF is pretty much at an end, which is especially sad because he leaves behind a tremendous professional legacy.
In addition to being one of the world's prominent bankers, Strauss-Kahn was expected to run against and likely beat French President Nicolas Sarkozy next year. Those ambitions, for now, almost certainly derailed. In court today, U.S. prosecutors said they were investigating at least one other similar case, likely an alleged sexual attack in 2002. On a French talk show, writer Tristan Benon claims Strauss-Kahn assaulted her 9 years ago. She never filed charges then, but is considering them now. Known as the Great Seducer, the twice-divorced married father of 4 has admitted infidelity, most recently with an IMF staffer in 2008. Supporters say it was a consensual relationship. Even his current wife, an American-born journalist, came to his defense. In a statement, she said, "I don't believe for a second the accusations leveled against my husband." Strauss-Kahn will be held in a jail cell on Rikers Island, a far cry from the luxury hotel suite where the attack allegedly took place. If convicted, he faces 5 to 25 years in prison. Katie?
Michelle Miller, thank you very much. Meanwhile, up in orbit, the shuttle Endeavour is closing in on the International Space Station. Endeavour's 25th and final flight is also the next to last shuttle mission. The spacecraft thundered through low clouds at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida this morning. These images were captured by a passenger on a Delta Airlines flight from New York to West Palm Beach. Before leaving, Commander Mark Kelly left flowers and cards for his 2 daughters and his wife, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. She attended the launch, another milestone in her recovery from an assassination attempt in January.
0 and liftoff for the final launch of Endeavour.
At 8:56 a.m., with 7 million pounds of thrust and a $2 billion payload on board, the shuttle Endeavour was finally bound for space.
Houston, Endeavour, all program.
But among the estimated 500,000 people on hand to bid Endeavour safe journey, there was one spectator who was especially riveted. What was Gabby's reaction to the launch?
was emotional and a sense of relief and excitement. It was beautiful. So she was really happy to see it go up.
Gabrielle Gifford's chief of staff, Pia Carasone, was with the recovering congresswoman during liftoff, watching from the roof of the Launch Control Center, shielded from public view 3 miles from the pad.
At the end, she kind of looked at me and said, "Good stuff."
Giffords came here to the Kennedy Space Center 2 weeks ago when the launch was scrubbed due to a short circuit in the shuttle's engine compartment. But Carasone says her boss is handling the travel well.
The doctors told us that this trip would be a rehab trip for her because she would be, not just moving around a lot, but experiencing new things, meeting new people, and there's just a lot of adrenaline and excitement going. So she's having a great time.
Now that Endeavor's 16-day mission is underway, Giffords will return to Houston for more rehabilitation. The next big medical hurdle, putting back the piece of her skull that doctors removed to allow her brain to swell. What have doctors decided to do in terms of making her skull whole again?
Well, they've decided to use a fabricated segment as opposed to her original. They feel it's safer, cleaner, and actually it's a better piece, a puzzle piece sort of fitting in there, if you can imagine that.
During my interview with Mark Kelly just 2 weeks ago, he downplayed media reports that his wife's progress may have been overstated.
I was told very early on in this process, on January 8th, that she is going to get worse. She's going to get worse in the next week, and then she'll get worse at some point in the next 2 weeks. And she never did. She gets better, all the time, day after day.
And he told me he was looking forward to his trip into space, partially because of what he'll find when he returns.
When I get back in a few weeks, she's going to be noticeably different than when I left. I know that's the case. So it's exciting to see the improvement day to day and week to week. It's really exciting.
Kelly took Gifford's wedding ring along with him on the flight. She's wearing his on a silver chain around her neck. Now, from astronauts to the astronomical national debt, the United States today reached its borrowing limit of $14,294 billion. That means the government can't borrow another penny until Congress raises the debt limit, and that's tied up in a political battle between Republicans and Democrats. In the meantime, the Treasury will take steps to keep the U.S. from defaulting, including dipping into federal pension funds. Turning to presidential politics now, one thing Republican Donald Trump is definitely not lacking is self-confidence. He said today he's sure he could win the Republican nomination and defeat President Obama. But as Jan Crawford reports, in the season finale of his flirtation with the White House, Trump said he's not fired up for a campaign.
I will not be running for president as much as I'd like to.
From the beginning, the question for Donald Trump was simple. Is he serious? No one knew what to make of the big-talking billionaire who said things establishment candidates wouldn't touch.
Is there a Muslim problem in the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't notice Swedish people knocking down the World Trade Center.
But it was his focus on President Obama's citizenship that got attention.
There's something on that birth certificate that he doesn't like.
Oh, my God.
That's a terrible thing to say.
But then Obama played his own Trump card. He finally released his full birth certificate showing he was, in fact, born in Hawaii.
We do not have time for this kind of silliness. We got better stuff to do.
Days later, at the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, the president made the boss of Celebrity Apprentice look like an apprentice himself.
And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing?
Trump said today he would be back on his TV show next season. Analysts say his decision won't make much difference.
I don't think it changes the way anyone is thinking, because I don't think anyone honestly believed he was going to get in the race.
Trump is the second Republican in 2 days to say he won't run. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who could have been a serious challenger, announced over the weekend he was skipping the race.
So that leaves an unsettled Republican field. There are some experienced politicians. We've got Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, Tim Pawlenty, but no, really well-known names. And they're facing a president who, as Trump himself experienced, is willing to use his bully pulpit to play hardball. Katie?
Jan Crawford. Jan, thank you. In other news, relations between the United States and Pakistan are still strained over the U.S. raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. Today, Senator John Kerry, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, met with Pakistani leaders in Islamabad but offered no apologies. Both sides did pledge to work together in future operations, and Kerry said the Pakistanis also agreed to return the tail section of that stealth helicopter that crashed during the raid. Turning now to Libya, an international war crimes prosecutor is seeking an arrest warrant for Muammar Gaddafi, accusing him of killing civilians in Libya. NATO, meanwhile, kept up the pressure on Gaddafi's forces today with new airstrikes in Tripoli. In a 60 Minutes interview, I spoke with Defense Secretary Robert Gates about the U.S. role in Libya. Are we at war with Libya?
Well, the way I like to put it is, from the standpoint of the United States, we're involved in a limited kinetic action. If I were in Gaddafi's shoes, I would think I was at war.
Why the semantics?
Well, I think, a war connotes what we've done in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our role right now is actually very limited. It's basically a support role.
Can you foresee any situation in which there will be U.S. boots on the ground in Libya?
No, the president has been very, very clear about that.
The regime in Syria is killing civilians as well. Should we have a no-fly zone over Syria?
No, I think you have to make these decisions on a case-by-case basis. I don't think the United States ought to be militarily involved in Syria at all. And I think it would be unlikely that any other country would want to take that on either.
Gates said Iran is also a huge concern for the U.S. In that 60 Minutes interview, he called the Iranians troublemakers who are trying to exploit the revolutions in the region. When Don Hewitt created 60 Minutes back in 1968, he chose Joe Wershba as one of the 6 original producers. He was already a legend here at CBS. Best known for his work on Edward R. Murrow's See It Now segments that exposed Senator Joseph McCarthy's communist witch hunt in the 1950s. Actor Robert Downey Jr. portrayed Wershba in the movie Good Night and Good Luck. He spent 20 years producing Emmy Award-winning pieces for 60 Minutes before retiring in 1988. Joe Wershba died over the weekend. He was 90. And coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, diverting the floods. The cities are safe, but now the water's headed for the heart of Cajun country. Well, the tide appears to have turned in the battle against the rising Mississippi. Much of the floodwater was diverted when the Army Corps of Engineers opened 2 major spillways. That spared the big cities, but it came at a cost to rural communities in the floodplain. Dean Reynolds is in Amelia, Louisiana tonight. Dean, a lot of water is headed in that direction.
And to give you an idea of the power of the water coming out of that spillway, it could fill up an Olympic swimming pool in less than a second.
The spillway strategy designed to lessen the force of the mighty Mississippi appears to be successful.
The crest that we thought we were going to have a couple of days ago prior to opening up the Moganza floodway has been reduced because of that operation.
The river is now expected to reach a height of 45 feet at Baton Rouge on Wednesday, instead of the record 47.5 feet previously calculated. New Orleans will top off at 17 feet and go no higher, according to the National Weather Service.
The Corps continues to assure us Baton Rouge and New Orleans should not anticipate any flooding. The reality is the mainline levees are projected to hold.
The result was accomplished by opening even fewer gates at the spillway than anticipated. Only 11 of 125 are open now. That means the low-lying, less populated areas in the path of the spillway tide will probably have more time to prepare for the water's approach. So far, slower and shallower than once feared.
You're still going to have thousands of homes with water, still going to have millions of acres with water, but that's certainly better news than what we were facing just as recently as this past weekend.
In Melville, Louisiana, in the path of the floodwaters,
there's nothing but a sand bowl out there.
Roger Harrington catches crawfish for a living, or he did until the river ran too strong.
There's too much current. Too much current, I can't crawfish. I can't run hook nets or lines or anything. It's got too much current, and it's nowhere. It ain't got no bank.
And he's just one of some 25,000 people who will be affected by the flooding that will inundate their towns and homes to save the big cities and homes of many thousands more. Katie?
Dean Reynolds. Dean, thanks very much. In other news, Jerry Lewis has hosted the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon for 45 years, raising $2.5 billion. But today he said the next one on Labor Day will be his last. Lewis, who's 85, will continue as national chairman of MDA. And when we come back, it's become the biggest case for LA detectives who beat a Giants fan nearly to death. Detectives in Los Angeles have chased down hundreds of leads in the beating of a San Francisco Giants fan outside Dodger Stadium. But so far, no arrest. And as Bill Whitaker reports, the victim still faces a long recovery.
46 days after being beaten nearly to death at the LA Dodgers opening game, 42-year-old Brian Stowe was transferred today from a critical care unit in Los Angeles by ambulance, by plane, to San Francisco General. His mother says the father of two and avid San Francisco Giants fan remains in a coma-like state.
People in that state can open their eyes, they have movement, but they don't know how much of that is Brian doing it on his own. It's just his body response.
The response of the LAPD has been massive, despite 17 detectives working full-time, plastering the city with 300 of these billboards. A $100,000 reward. They still haven't apprehended the two assailants they say beat Stowe simply because he was wearing a Giants jersey. As of today, the LAPD has received 461 tips. Detectives have investigated every one of them, and they're now focused on two, which they consider most promising. So right now, you kind of need a lucky break.
We need a break. We needed that one big break. It could be that one phone call, that one person out there who knows who the suspect is. That's how we're going to solve this case.
Ann Stowe says the family has complete faith in the LAPD, but...
And they always say if you don't catch them within those first 48 hours, it gets hard.
As for Brian Stowe, his recovery will be hard and for now uncertain. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And coming up next, the promise she carried with her for 38 years.
Tonight's Assignment America is sponsored by the U.S. Postal Service.
And finally tonight, nearly 40 years ago, a young girl made a promise to a soldier she'd never met to keep a vigil for him until the day he came home from the war. In tonight's Assignment America, Steve Hartman reports that day has come.
CBS News, near Pelham, Alabama.
And thank you, Steve, for Kathy's story and for everything. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.